yet we are not where we want to be. We are not where we need to be. We are not where our fans expect us to be, and we are not where we expect ourselves to be. Our goal is to field a team every year that can compete for this division and for a World Series championship.
Come meet me at the Musial with Alan and Daniel. We'll talk about the Cardinals all night long. Everyone come gather round, listen to your favorite sound. We'll talk about the Cardinals all night long. We'll talk the games and all the rest, about the team that we love best. We'll talk about the Cardinals all night long. We're gonna talk about the Cardinals all night long.
Good morning and welcome into another edition of Meet Me at Musial. I'm your host, Daniel Shoptaw at C70. With me, as always, Alan Medlock, a Medlock One. Saturday morning after an eventful week for the Cardinals as the reins were finally handed over. John Mozeliak has no office in Busch Stadium anymore. It's the Chaim Bloom show. And that's basically what we're going to talk about today, I think, for the most part. And Alan, before we get into the meat of it, which would have been Chaim Bloom, were you able to, see or hear anything of John Mozeliak's last conference?
Well, it was, being in the middle of the morning or middle of the day, I wasn't able to hear much of it, but I tried to do as many searches as I could to try to figure out what was going on. It was, not at all surprising. I thought that some of the candid comments about how we never had to rebuild while I was here, and now we're going to have to, it says a lot. I don't even know, to me, not to latch on to the dramatic part of it, but I did think that was a little bit telling, considering that's the end of his tenure, and maybe one of the reasons it is the end of his tenure to turn it over to the next one. But yeah, on the Mo, it was one of those where I'm kind of glad that he got the send off that he deserved. I did not think that was going to happen. I thought that the weekend in Chicago, albeit bad baseball, was cool to see how that went, and there was a lot of focus on him leaving and, and things like that, as far as through the broadcast, and a lot of very kind words said and things like that. So to see that it went out on a pretty high note on Monday was refreshing. I didn't think that it would necessarily go that way, just because he's, while we're fans and have we kind of drank the Kool-Aid for all those years, so to speak, with poor choice of words, but I'm glad that he's not necessarily vilified, and I was glad to see how things went to close it out.
Yeah, that kind of press conference is so rare, right? I mean, because usually when a person leaves a position like John Mozeliak left his, it's because he's been fired, or it's in like an off-season resignation or something like that. They don't usually have an exit conference for a guy like that. And so it was a little bit different to see that, in the fact that this was it's almost like a coronation, or just a transfer of power type of thing that you don't get to see. And so it was interesting. I didn't really know what to expect out of John Mozeliak's press conference. And I mean, again, it wasn't anything dramatic at all. It was a bunch of reflection, and
Sure.
there was something he said in the vein of what, we never, we didn't use this term, and that may be different when you talk to them tomorrow, or something of that nature. I don't remember exactly how he phrased it. That stood out a bit, but for the most part, it was a look back at a very successful time. And I think he was fairly honest in the fact that, they needed a fresh voice. He, it wasn't, didn't, he needed to move on. He needed to clear out and let this organization find a new path. And, I don't know how much of that was, suggested to him by by the DeWitts or whatever. But I just don't think a lot of people have that kind of self-awareness either, right? I think that especially in a competitive field like this, there would be that I can fix it idea. And maybe that's what we've seen out of Mo the last couple of years. But I think that it is very difficult for someone to say they're going to be better without me right now. And, I think I give credit for him for doing that, even if, I don't know how much of that was really implied from the top. I wonder if the DeWitts would have been perfectly fine for him to just be there until they were gone. I mean, they
Sure.
seem to be pretty content with him, but I think with them bringing in Chaim Bloom and then really getting a feel for what this organization needed, it was a time in his life when he was ready to go and he realized that he needed to. So
Sure.
I give him credit for that.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I think you're right. I think that he was instrumental in saying, "Hey, we probably need a fresh voice here," because I mean, it. I no matter how strong things go, the run never lasts forever, and I you know the line live long enough to be the villain, and I feel
Right.
like that's happened quite a bit,
Yep.
and sometimes I think that's unfair to Mo. But he also, I think he wore it pretty well. And honestly, I think he enjoyed it a little bit of being the bad guy, just because we've seen the candidness of him um, and had kind of seen that probably he has that ability pretty quickly, to be able to say some things that probably aren't very favorable. The all that said, I mean, however you feel, I mean, it was completely a successful run. I think that this is going to be a smooth transition, and you've had to do it with your replacement in your back pocket or on your back for the last 2 years. I mean, I would think that you would have to be instrumental in that, and I I looked forward to his presser more than I did the Tuesday. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Um, I had to pull it up to see exactly. John Mozeliak's only 56 years old, so
Yeah.
and I know some people out there are probably saying that's a really old job, but not here. we, we
Yes.
we appreciate how young that is.
Yes.
But I mean I just because it wasn't a okay I have to retire type of situation. I know that front offices are getting younger and it is more difficult maybe to keep up. And I'm again not saying this was a bad move at all. Um, but it'll be interesting. Immediately, I think it was that same day, maybe it was the next day, one day this week. The front office job in Colorado opened up.
Yes.
Um, and Anomo has said he's going to take a couple months off for sure, not do anything, all that. Um, and he also did say, I think in his press conference that, St. Louis was his home. So I don't know that, but he came from Colorado. That's an organization that is very familiar to him. Does he get involved over there? I doubt it, but I'm sure there's a little bit of a temptation there to say, hey, they're in real bad shape, so it can't hurt to try some stuff over there.
Yeah, it's kind of that natural draw to see that he could head back there where he got started. The success here, they need some sort of stability, which Mo has clearly added. I did wonder how quick something like that would happen, but I think you're right. I don't think we're going to see. I don't think we'll see him step out at least for the next couple of years, if maybe at all, back into baseball. Which I was kind of thinking that was a done deal until some of the comments that he made that he wasn't necessarily retired. So we'll see, but that does seem like the natural landing spot. But there's going to be others. I just don't know how tainted he is after the past few years, or throughout baseball itself.
I feel like anytime he does, when he gets back into baseball, if he gets back into baseball, all that, it's going to be very similar to what Walt Jocketty did with the Reds, where he was an advisor to the owner
Mm-hmm.
or whatever the case may be. And I think maybe eventually Walt wound up as the GM, but that's at least how he got back into it. It's just an advisor, and I think that's probably where Mo is. I don't know that he would want the day to day. I don't know that he just he's going to have that, competitive juices or whatever like that. I think he'd want to be back at baseball, but I don't know that he'd want that, all the pressure on him, especially as things have changed. You never know. I mean, again, but people do hire younger. I mean, 56
Sure.
is older for a front office. That's for a team that is trying to win and trying to be competitive, trying to, stay up with the trends. There's not a lot of hiring people like that these days. Now, a team like Colorado doesn't necessarily fit those molds. I did hear, I think it was Jeff Jones that put out that he thought it was less that Mo would take that job as that Mo might have influence on that job and somebody like Randy Flores might get it.
Yeah, I did notice that one.
Somebody else suggested, maybe like Gersh or somebody going out that way. So I think that'll be interesting to see if there is somebody that with Cardinal connections that winds up out in Colorado. Maybe they'll send $50 million to get them. Who knows?
Yeah.
So Mo's out of the picture. He's packed his office up. Chaim Bloom comes out the next day with the DeWitts flanking him, and gives I think the beginning of his prepared remarks, which were obviously prepared. I mean, he's reading them and everything,
Yeah.
but they were good. I think it was a real nice to see the nod to the history, and it felt like he had really absorbed some stuff over the last 2 years and really kind of had gotten into what it is to be in St. Louis, what this, the franchise means and all that kind of stuff. So I thought that was good. I mean, everything else was nice, but it wasn't anything groundbreaking.
Yeah, kind of what we were talking about last week. It's nice to hear, and there were some things that I was like, okay, that makes some sense, and it's not going to be the foreign invader feeling, of the guy coming from Tampa and Boston and coming in, and we're really going to reshuffle the deck a little bit. I kind of want to get your take on this. I thought the continuity comments, those really surprised me a little bit. Now, my question to you, are those genuine?
I think they probably are in
Yeah.
the way that I think the Cardinal way, take this. The Cardinal way has adjusted and developed over the years, right? But and I think what Chaim Bloom was saying, part of what it is to innovate and to be in the front of the trends, whatever those trends are. And so I think in that way, you're going to have that continuity, even if he's not doing exactly what Mo would have done, exactly what Walt Chocolate would have done, because I think we saw continuity even with Mo coming from, going from Walt to Mo, in the fact that they were, Mo had been in the organization and we kind of approached some things similarly, but he also had his own way of doing it. And I think I think the fact of continuity is they're not going to go and be huge players in free agency like they've never been. They're going
Sure.
to draft and develop. So I don't think that means that, they're going to continue to trade good prospects for iffy prospects or anything like that. I just think it's more of a spiritual continuity than anything else.
Sure. And that's I wondered more when I heard it if it was more keeping a lot of the infrastructure that's in place as far as the coaching that they have now, which probably he had a part to do with in the last 2 years, and building upon that. Because that's kind of the way that I'd looked at it. And I thought the Cerfolio interview that we talked about a couple of weeks ago, maybe even last week, had built upon that. You could tell that it's going to be from the bottom up, which I would assume any rebuild truly is. But I think there will be a lot of moves that we see but don't feel immediately, just because I think it's going to be more infrastructurally as far as the organizational development. I think that they'll probably be adding jobs and roles and shifting some stuff around aside from just replacing people with who they deem a better candidate. I think that's going to be a multiple voice type situation where we start seeing a heck of a lot more oversight from the developmental side of things.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think, and some of that is, they've already started that, and they're just continuing and making it bigger and doing things like that. Yeah, I agree. I think what was most interesting maybe out of Bloom's comments was the fact that he was saying, "Look, we're going to still compete." So this
Yeah,
isn't basically, this is not a tanking job. This is not tear everything out and throw everything away and lose 100 games. We're not doing that. We're going to we're going to compete, but I think what we've seen over the last few years, which has been part of the problem, right? If they had it succeeded a little bit more this past year, Mo would have bought at the trade deadline instead of sold. And I don't think Chaim Bloom would do that, right?
yeah,
He's got a plan in place, and he's not going to slap a Band-Aid over it just so they can get to the playoffs and lose in 2 games to the Dodgers. They're going to, they've got a significant goal in mind, and when the team is closer and when the team is ready, yeah, you make some moves like that, but you're not doing it just to, break a Octoberless streak or anything like that. And I think that was very interesting to say in your first press conference, basically. But I think, we'll see if they stick with it, and I think they probably will. But I think that's going to, I think it probably ruffle some feathers, right? Next year when a surprising Cardinal team is 4 games out of a wild card with, in the last part of July, and Bloom sells pieces instead of buys them.
sure. Yeah, no, I agree. I thought that was kind of the preparation comment as well. The it's one of those to where next year's results may be just about equal. Which I mean, you and I both have said that. Hey, I mean, this is not where they want to be, but at least this is entertaining to kind of be in the mix. The all of that kind of leads back to me of where are they going to re-energize, because that obviously attendance was brought up in these meetings,
Mhm.
um, and you want to see how much they can thread that needle a little bit. But those comments to me, actually, I liked it because I don't. I felt like there was enough of the continuity comments, enough of the we're going to compete, on the margins here, but our main goal is to improve and be a championship series and World Series winning club, meaning the development is going to be from the bottom up. Did kind of get me juiced up a little bit about next year's roster, because I thought, okay, I think they have seen some of the things that everybody else has seen, and that there's going to be a little bit of the continuity on the roster. I think that we've broken down a lot of that, of the guys that we think may be coming back and guys who are definitely not coming back, and we don't know the definitives on those, but you get a pretty good ballpark idea of, hey, these expiring contracts are the things that we're going to have to move on from, and we're going to have to build up from what we have, and balance the arbitration numbers. But Bloom mentioned, he said there's pieces here that can win, and mentioned additions and things like that, which kind of leads me to believe that next year's lineup could be a little bit exciting, that we may run with a Weatherholt Walker and see where it goes. And if you compete, you compete. They kind of address some of the pitching things. I mean, now I am going back on something that I talked about last week. To me, the words aren't really going to matter. I mean, I'm kind of ready to see what actions follow those.
Mhm.
And I'm assuming we're going to probably know those pretty quick, as far as some of the things that they probably trade off the current roster.
I mean, probably. I don't know that this will be a winter where, we're getting into January and nothing has happened. I
Yeah,
feel like that's,
agreed.
going to be a little bit more active than that.
I
Yeah,
think the messaging you have to make. How much do you think spring matters to Weatherholt right now?
I don't think I don't I hope and I think that Bloom's probably less likely. I don't think it matters at all.
I agreed, and I think that messaging needs to be out there. That's why I say that about some of those moves. Where I see it, I would love to keep a Donovan, but if that's one of the moves you make, I mean, I feel like you feel that. I think that by the winter meetings, that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that the Cardinals they should have a pretty good grasp on Weatherholt. And I think in this idea of not having short-term gratification, If they feel like he needs more time in Memphis, he's going to get more time in Memphis. If they think he's ready for the major leagues, then they may make sure that there's a spot for him on the major leagues by trading Donovan or Gorman or whoever, or whatever it may be. I hope, and we've talked about this so many, we talked about it with Jordan Walker, we talked about it with Victor Scott, where they started to fall in love with these guys in spring training, and they weren't necessarily ready for the major leagues, even though they had a good spring. I hope that the evaluations, when he's talking about, not having the short-term gratification, that falls into that, right? That yes, there's going to be some spring training competitions, but it's usually like, the fifth starter
Yeah.
or, a guy that they think is ready, but, they also have a competition with somebody else that, could or could not take that spot. I don't, on the edges maybe, but I don't think anybody can go into spring not being on the major league roster and win a job like that. I mean, or just, come out of nowhere and surprise. Which, I mean, again, we talk about Walker and we talk about Victor Scott, but I mean, if you go back far enough, that would mean Albert Pujols wouldn't have started in the major leagues after his spring training.
Yeah.
And so that can happen in the spring training, but Albert Pujols is a once in a lifetime too. So trying to base your operations around that is probably not a good deal. So I think that's going to be interesting to see in spring. I think that they probably have a plan for Weatherholt that if one or two or three of these guys gets traded, he's up. If not, he starts in Memphis, and they start finding, give him a little bit more time, because it's not like he's being buried in the minor league. I mean, he's only had 1 year of
Yeah.
of minor league work. So I think that I think they've got solid plans for these guys, and they're not going to deviate from those unless something really strange happens.
Sure. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I wondered that the same thing throughout the comments in the presser of what how much of it was the things you have to say and how much of it is the device plan. You know what I mean? The like the Arenado comments, you have to make those, right? I mean, I was surprised that they came out as quick as they did about the DFA, because that was something I kind of thought was possible, as in, hey, what's best for both clubs here, and that was talked about. How genuine was the comments that we'd love to have him back?
I think they're very genuine. I think, I mean, again,
Is that due to the low expectations though?
I mean, somewhat, but it's also like, look, we talked about it. If you had Gorman all year long at third base, you probably don't win as many games as you did with
True.
Nolan there. I think that Nolan is a Hall of Famer, and he's a guy that has not burned any bridges at all there. They understand why he would want to leave. He understands why they want him to leave, but I don't think anybody doesn't like each other's company. So, and I think there is a limit to what the DeWitts will do. The DeWitts have said, they're going to give Chaim Bloom the resources to compete, whether that means, adding players in free agency, which the Cardinals are probably going to do, at least in the pitching side of things. Whether it means, adding more money to the staffing and development budgets, whether that means adding more money available for being able to trade some of these players. I think that, there's opportunities, but I think the DeWitts would draw a line, even if Chaim Bloom wanted to, and I don't know that he does, but even if Chaim Bloom wanted to DFA Nolan Arenado, I think that the DeWitts would draw a line there, because I think that, one, they were probably one of the driving factors to get him here, and two, it's one thing to pay part of the contract for him to play somewhere else. It's another for you to play the entire contract and him to go play someplace for the league minimum, and wind up beating you somewhere down the road. So, I think they'd be perfectly fine with it. And of course, it strengthens your trading hand, right? I mean, if you tell people that, oh well, we might DFA him if we can't find a trade, nobody's going to trade for him.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, very true. So all those great points. it's like I said, I felt like we've heard these year after year after year, and not that it's exhausting, but mine's more of a just the I wouldn't say fear of the unknown, but the skepticism of the unknown a little bit. Now, I also am all on board with the fresh new look, because I feel like there was a lot of trudging in the mud recently just because developmentally you were so far behind. And I felt like Katie's article last year really pointed to those things that were troublesome. So to see that some of those things are changing and moving in the right direction, I mean, I love all the comments, and it sounds like everybody's on the same page on these kind of things. But yeah, you kind of want to see those first couple of moves of how truly dictated they are by the plan. And I feel like we've seen some of that in the draft. I felt like Flores was on a YouTube channel recently and was talking about how hard it is to find the things that they found throughout the draft, and a new directive that they're following, and going in that route, which I would assume is from Bloom and his staff, overall. So yeah, I'm excited to, even as we get into the playoffs and another sub 500 season, it's refreshing to know that there's kind of a new voice and a new direction, and just a new energy that's going to come with the ball club overall.
Yeah, and I mean, again, at least we've known for this is like the second or third year we've known that the Cardinals really aren't. I guess probably second that really Cardinals weren't really going to be in free agency at all. I mean, the Cardinals will probably look for some sort of veteran pitcher just because they don't have the innings and arms to
Yes.
cover things, and Chaim Bloom has said that they probably would look for something like that, but they're not going to go shopping at the top of the list or anything like that, and so free agency won't be necessarily exciting. But it's nice to know that last year we went into the winter not really expecting anything at all to happen. We thought some things might, but they needed to. But we also figured, they probably wouldn't do anything. It's nice to go into the winter and feel like changes are going to happen. That we're going to see activity one way or another. Again, when that starts, nothing until the World Series is done. But it'll be interesting to see how fast those things start, rolling off. Do they start non-tendering or releasing players? Do they start trying to make trades? Even maybe before winter meetings. I think a lot of that stuff's going to be pretty fascinating to look at. Also, I guess the biggest news that came out of this, which was, I mean, again, not a huge surprise, but
Yeah.
Ollie Marmol will be back next year as manager of the Cardinals. Now, there's been some talk that maybe they're looking at giving him extension, but right now that is not the case. He would go in as a lame duck manager, which, I mean, is not the worst thing. Not ideal, but not the worst thing. Were you at all surprised that they went ahead and made it clear that Ollie was coming back?
Not necessarily surprised, but relieved that they did it there. You know what I mean? I always say this. You cut that. It's the path of least resistance. Not saying he's not the best guy for the job. Not saying that he doesn't get along extremely well with the current front office, or the new front office. Not one of those things. But to knock that down and say, "Hey, listen, this is the direction we're going to go." Although being a lame duck, and the comments about, "Hey, we have not discussed an extension," and things like that. I'm just glad they knocked that off the shopping list fast. Especially, and now in hindsight, knowing that that's pretty good, because you hear a lot of Pujols, you hear a lot of Molina, and we clearly see what happened with Schumacher. That would have been a distraction with things going forward, because all those names would have been brought up, and that's not necessarily fair to any one of them, in the situation. And I think it muddies the waters in what this directive is with the new front office.
Yeah, yeah. I mean that's fair enough, and I think that's kind of the way that this manager stuff goes, right? You either
Agreed.
fire them the first day your season's over, or you wind up keeping them, and so it wouldn't have done Ollie any good to twist. And if you did wind up firing him later on, a lot of the good candidates would be taken. Speaking of, like you said, Skip's going to Texas, and we kind of knew that. I mean, he'd been down there all year long. It seemed like that
Yeah.
was pretty much an obvious thing. There's a lot of talk, and I don't know that I've seen anything official yet, but I would not be surprised if Albert going to Anaheim to be their manager. What's your thought on that? I know a lot of people get worked up thinking that he's managing somewhere else, that he's not in St. Louis.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, this is complete gut reaction. One, I think it's an ignorant move to bring in somebody without a lot of managerial experience, other than some of the showcase,
Mm.
the showcase stuff that they've done. And I know that he's managed in the winter leagues and things like that. And I'm a huge Pujols guy. I don't want to take that away at all. But is this not the most Moreno move?
Mm.
Because I mean, he's doing it to get to be in the headlines a little bit. And for a team that, you've had the best player on the planet for 10 years and you've played, what, 2 playoff games? I feel like you're going to have to change the direction of how things are going. And this isn't necessarily the best move. And hell, it may work for a year. I don't know. But on the flip side of that, I'm sure glad it's happening there and not St. Louis. Because one, I feel like it's a media grab a little bit. And two, I feel like you said it best. You get hired to get fired. And they never end well, especially with the expectations when you come in with a Hall of Fame career.
Yeah, I think like I said, I think it's the best thing possible is for him to get the job, but it not being in St. Louis.
Sure.
If partly, mainly because of what you're saying. Yeah, I can't. It sounds fun to have Albert Pujols sitting in the dugout managing, and I think Albert has done a fine job in the things that he's, the
Sure.
winter leagues or whatever the case may be. He might be a fine in-game manager. I know that there is a tendency, Ted Williams was not that great. Others have struggled. Frank Robinson was pretty good, but star players don't always understand that not everybody can go up there and get a hit when they're
100%.
supposed to.
Yeah.
But I also think I have problems imagining Albert Pujols or Yadier Molina, after a game standing in front of reporters answering questions
Yeah.
every day, especially after losses. And especially if the losses start to pile up. I think the media aspect, the managing players aspect of it. I think, like I said, I think both those guys, great baseball minds, they would probably have no problem with this is when we're going to go to the bullpen. This is we're going to pinch hit here, all that kind of stuff. I think they could run a game, no problem. I just think it's the other stuff around it that becomes problematic. And like you said, I just would not want to see those guys, when it gets down to, because it always does, right? If they'd had a year or two like the last couple of years for people to be calling for their heads, and I would prefer that not to have that happen. And would Albert Pujols put more people in the seats? Maybe a little bit, but who's coming to see the manager?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's not like he's going to put himself in uniform and pinch hit, probably. So I just think that I think it's very good. And if he goes out there and he succeeds, then hey, who knows? Maybe someday you do take that on, and assuming that it's, he's more of a manager now than he was it's just hey, we're trying a player out.
Yeah.
So I hope he gets that job out there. And to be fair, let's also, for Albert, there is that other consideration that he's under contract with the Angels.
I was just getting ready to say that. Yeah.
I don't know how that would work. Would the Angels let him out of that contract to go manage somewhere? He's only getting paid. Is it? I don't remember what it is. $1 million. I don't know how much he's getting paid per year, but he's got that services contract. I don't know if they'd let him out of it. I don't know if, he obviously couldn't keep it and manage some other team. I don't know how that would work. So, it makes sense for him to take the Anaheim job.
Yeah, agreed. That's whenever I heard the names pop up, I was like, that's just such a Moreno move, and probably that contract plays a factor. You know what I mean? I completely believe it, but they just can't get out of their own way sometimes. And while I love Pujols, it's just one of those that you could see this as a mistake coming.
Oh, Moreno loves his stars, and
Yeah.
and to have a guy like Albert Pujols, which I'm sure he has personal affection for after the 10 years that he was out there, no doubt. But to have that, name as a manager is, I'm sure, right in their wheelhouse, which is also part of the problem with that whole, that whole organization is they've not developed anything. So I don't know. I think it'll be interesting to see. I wouldn't, I'd probably put 70-30 that he's going to get that. But, and there's a lot of other jobs around. I think it's going to be, might be interesting to see if Yachty's name pops up in any of those. I
Yeah.
think Yachty still has his family issue. He's still got a son that's going to school and all that kind of stuff. So he may not be ready for a full-time job yet anyway. But I think it'll be interesting to see if anybody else, like Atlanta or whoever, Minnesota wanted, at least puts his name in consideration. I don't know. It'd be interesting. All right. So there was maybe the most, I don't know if say controversial, the most unbelievable comment, I guess, from the Chaim Bloom press conference was when somebody, and I don't, watching those press conferences, it becomes difficult to even know what the question is, much less who's asking it, because there's no mics down there. But somebody asked about payroll and what it was going to be and if they were going to raise it. And the senior Bill DeWitt said, Chaim and I haven't even talked about payroll yet. And absolutely nobody believed him.
Yeah.
Do you believe him, I guess?
Wouldn't that be two sides? Wouldn't that, it's always a follow the money play. Wouldn't that be the first thing you discuss? Of, hey, this is what parameters we're going to have to work under because this is what we earned? Or is it we have to see where we are because we brought in a heck of a lot less people than we thought? Which one of those would be more true?
I think out of those options, I think probably more likely the second one. But
okay.
But what I would say is, I think it's possible that they have not talked about payroll, at least not in this is what you've got this year.
Sure.
Because it doesn't matter.
Well, very true.
What Chaim Bloom is more concerned about is draft and development, right? That's where he's going to want the money to go. The Cardinals have, if they're able to trade off some of these guys, but even if not, I mean, they're going to have to pay some of those contracts, but they're at what, 140, 150 million. Chaim Bloom knows he's not going to go out and add a whole lot of money.
Yeah.
I just don't know that it's been a huge point. Like I said, they've talked about, I'm not saying they haven't talked about things generally, but I'm saying they probably haven't had a sit down conversation that says you have to get the payroll around $165 million or whatever the case may be. Because with so many young players on this team that are just going to arbitration, with so many, some of the big contracts coming off, and you figure you're going to save some money on those. I just don't think it's a situation where, especially since they're only planning on getting, second or third string pitchers in the market, I don't think there's an issue of them getting anywhere close to bumping up to a spot where the ownership is uncomfortable. And so they haven't necessarily had that conversation. They've talked about how much they want to put into the minor leagues, how much they want to put into staffing. But I would not be surprised if they not had a firm conversation on payroll.
Sure. Now that all makes sense. That makes a lot of, I mean, that says a lot just because you're probably spot on of, hey, it doesn't matter what payroll is. These are the obligations we have to have. Can we get rid of those? And this is where we will end up, but don't expect to spend any because our goal is to build from the bottom anyway.
Mm. Yeah, I think so. No, maybe it plays into, we're talking about draft and development, and we know that there are a number of guys on this team that might get traded. But do you think that, like the Mason Wynn, maybe the Von Herrera, the people you expect are more of a lock to be here? Do you see them going ahead and locking them up into an extension this winter while now that it's turned over to Chaim Bloom?
I've kind of wondered about that. The one that we've talked about this a lot. The one I feel like you miss on if you don't, it's going to be Wynn. just because the there's a whole lot of symbolism about why he fits in St. Louis so well. I know that those are the intangibles that you probably want to run from, but I think that if historically you're kind of walking that fine line and you've bought into what this is, and he said, Bloom said some of the things that make you think that yes, that's what they're going to try to restore. I feel like you have to start there. Now I'm assuming you're going to probably overpay as a probably defense first guy because the offense hadn't completely developed yet. But I do think that those are some of the things that you have to do to be aggressive and get out in front of the market a little bit. Those are the two names that I would love to see, re-signed. I mean, and maybe figure out a way to work it out with Donovan in some way. And a Burleson too. But I'm skeptical they do anything. Now, I wonder if that is part of the breaking the mold of how you get you do spend a lot of money and get these guys on long term in the beginning, to where I think that the last administration was a little risk averse to some of these things, not only just on the trade market, but on the locking down money. I mean, in a wise way. I feel like you paid for pitching with Michaelis, and you got 8 years out of him, and in the long term, I mean, this is a guy that took 30 starts, but it was kind of a sunken cost ultimately toward the last 3 years.
Yeah, I do wonder. I mean, I'm trying to look up. But I do think that maybe that's a possibility that they're more likely to do that, and be a little bit more aggressive in that regard. I always think, when I think about early extensions, I always think of Evan Longoria, who played like a day or two for the Rays before getting some big long-term extension. And I don't know if if that overlaps with Chaim Bloom or not. I was trying to figure it out real quick, and that wasn't good radio.
Yeah.
But I think it probably, if not, I mean, I think that's part of a little bit of what the Rays have done. Now, the Rays have also been, hey, we're not going to extend these guys because when they get to 4 or 5 years and start getting expensive, we're going to flip them.
Sure.
But I think that there's a desire to have continuity. And I also think you run the risk of players becoming good and then walking. And I feel like with Kansas City is always a situation for me, is that we develop 1 or 2 really good players, but by the time another 1 or 2 players were ready to come on, those guys were ready to be free agents. They didn't.
Yeah.
And if they had locked them down early, maybe you could have had the 4 or 5 good players and then been able to do something. And so I wonder if they wouldn't lock down Wynn or Herrera or somebody like that, just so that they're not hitting free agency when Weatherholt and Doyle and whoever the Cardinals draft this year are really starting to hit their stride, and you can have them all together, and not have to worry about signing them to a contract extension at that point in time or making sure they don't get to free agency. I don't know. I mean, I think that those kind of things they probably plot out, hey, who's going to be here in 2028 when we think we're going to be, really competitive, really ready to make their, a run or something. And maybe they start factoring in of, okay, well, we need to make sure this guy's here, that guy's here. I don't know. I do think that we're probably more likely to see those kind of extensions with this front office. I don't know and again, I think they should with Wynn. I wonder if it'll wait until you start seeing, well, I mean, Weatherholt will probably count in that regard, seeing the draft classes that Chaim Bloom is in the development side are really able to influence. And so they're, quote, quote, their guys. They're the guys that they think fit the mold better. I don't see any reason why Mason Wynn wouldn't be one of those guys either, but you know what I'm saying? That
Sure.
And maybe you don't extend a Donovan because you don't think he's gonna, age well. He's not gonna be the kind of player you need at that time. Who knows? But I think there's also an argument to be made that if you don't think these guys or some of these guys not necessarily, win, but if you don't think a Donovan or a Nuke Bar or a Gorman is going to be a guy that you want to extend, that you might as well go ahead and trade him now.
Sure. Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. The how much of a factor is just having a draw to the ballpark? How much of a factor is that in some of these extensions?
That's a good question. I think it probably plays it has to play something
I
in
would
there,
think
right?
so. And I think the eating crow with the comments tell you that that's a concern of theirs, that there's going to have to be some kind of, that they have to have some kind of draw. That's what makes me think that the win does get extended this year.
I think it's fair to, when you're not bringing anybody in for your free agency, to go ahead and try to highlight that. And maybe that's a situation where they are talking with the marketing team and seeing.
That's what I was going to say. The marketing has to be, new regime, change, refreshment, all those things. You know what I mean? And that's what makes me think that they may have to double down, and maybe we aren't shocked that it's a Win and a Herrera. I don't know, but I feel like there has to be some investment to show that, hey, this is the way that we're going, and this is who we're doubling down on.
I think that would be a real easy way to send that message for sure.
Yeah.
Assuming that they are, as committed to these guys as we think they are. And even Herrera, there's some question about, where's he going to play? Is he going to be a catcher? I know he's going to try for that this year, but if he doesn't, is he an outfielder? Is he a DH? Does that become a problem? But with Mason Wynn, there is no issue right there. Again, you have to pay him for his defense instead of his offense, and you pay him for his charisma, and you pay him for all that kind of stuff, and you feel like the offense is going to be good enough. But I think that's, it feels to me like, yeah, if you wanted to, kind of, hey, here's our new era, you go ahead and do that. Do you think that there's any chance that the Cardinals do what we've seen a couple other teams do, and basically go ahead and sign JJ Weatherholt to a contract, and that kind of guarantees him being there opening day?
Yeah, that's a good point. And I had thought about that, some months ago, where, hey, if there's I think some of the issue that we've had, that I'll just say me, that I've had, and it's not like it's that the advertising of the organization was a lot of uncertainty, and it was practice as patience, and just holding out, and we win this because we wait people out, and we don't do the same things that other people do. I wonder if some of the change is going to be a more of, you use the term commitment. I wonder if some of the commitment to the younger guys is a situation where you go out and sign two of the three of them, and one of them being, Weatherholt, and doing it early and breaking the mold of what we've seen done in St. Louis, to where you buy out those years, and you overpay, and you take care of you eat the risk if you have, because that's something we have not seen with Mo. There have been a few, and we had talked about it, like 11 was probably the last massive trade that he did that ran a little bit of risk. You're trading off your big league roster, and it paid off. And I don't know if we ever saw anything that risky again up to now, to where I think that that's going to be some of the signs of change that fans and the hardcore fans want to see, of the commitment to some of the younger guys, and not just playing it out until you get into arbitration. Then it turns into the crapshoot. And waiting to pay for certainty that's outside of the market. I think that may play a part. To answer your question, I would love it, but would still be surprised if that's the route they went with Weatherholt.
I do wonder. You do wonder still how much that 27 hangs over things. Not necessarily because of the lockout, but just because
Yes.
the CBA is going to change. There might be an argument to be made to go ahead and sign a guy like that because the minimum salary may be going up significantly, or they may add free agency a year later. I mean, who knows what things could change? I don't know what the negotiation points are going to be. But anytime a CBA gets signed, there's chances for significant changes in contract issues, and so if you sign a contract before that, then you're kind of locked in. You at least have that certainty, which is what the Cardinals have sometimes wanted. So I don't know. I think that's I don't know how much that plays into it. I don't know if they just kind of, if there's a situation where they'd rather not because they want to see what the CBA looks like. I'm sure there's some of that too, but hopefully we'll see at least some. Do they have to do things differently this winter? I mean, and I say that, do they need to sign a player like Weatherholt? Do they need to make that extension for Wynn? Do they need to trade somebody that, and make a move that you would never see John Mozeliak making? Do they need to do anything like that to differentiate and say, hey, it's a new day? Or do we trust that even if the surface looks similar, that the underlying stuff is getting better?
Well, I think one, it would be huge for public capital if they did make some move like that. And that's an area right now that I think that they're lacking, because I think that the overall fan base has run into the worst type of situation. And yeah, disinterest is one thing, but apathy is another. And I think that there is a lot of concern. I think there's a lot concern being the best word I can come up with, that you're going to have to communicate extremely well to get out of that, because the direction can't come across as trust us, we know more than you do.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I think that there's going to have to be open communication and a lot of broadcasting of, hey, we're doing this because, and it can't be we're doing this because we just know more. Because I think that's what people feel toward the end of the regime. I feel like that's what people felt of the organization, and I think that Mo didn't do himself any favors by, maybe I thought that he was candid the last 2 years, when he met with all of us. And we've seen it to where he's candid and funny, but I will say public opinion wasn't great because there was a lot of nose in the air to the general fan base. This is going to sound silly, but when your outfit screams,
but the last 50 minutes has it. I mean,
yes, when your outfit screams the things that it does and gets commented on a bunch, that's probably not good, because I don't know if that was necessarily the most Midwestern look. All that being said, I think that you asked, do we need to do something? As in, I don't know if the question came across as an organization, do they need to do something that's going to help in the long term right now? I don't know if I don't know if it's that desperate as far as the developmental side of things and the winning side, but I feel like they need to do things like that as far as stepping outside the box that they've built to show that, hey, actions speak louder than words. I do feel like that's a need they have to do.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think you're right. The public opinion is going to be there, and it needs a shaking up, because not everybody's following this, like, people that do podcasts and write blogs and things that are, that are, okay, this looks the same, but it's really different. I think there's a lot of people that are just like, this is the same stuff we've always had. I mean, there are people complaining already that Bloom didn't fire Ollie. So, it's like, it's almost Mo 2.0 and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, it's been less than a week, and, but if they don't see, and of course, for some people, it's if they don't see the move they want, not even just moves. But you're right. I think there's a lot of people that are, that would need to see something that made them say, okay, things are different.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that's going to be that walk up crowd to the ballpark. That's how you're going to get them back. I mean, there has to be a clear direction, and there has to be energy, or if not, it's going to be the same thing. You know what? I think a lot of the skepticism grows too is, Mo's not calling the shots, but the checkbook's still being written by the same people. And that I think I think we're going to have to see some Bloom decisions that show that, hey, they're willing to adapt as well.
Yeah, but then again, I think that's a difficult thing to do. I mean, yeah, maybe the extensions would help that. But, we talked about it even last year. They put so much money into hiring staff and getting technology and improving the draft and development side of things. And that's where Chaim Bloom is focused. That's where the DeWitts have typically been very excited and very, very much a part of that. And so they might be more willing to put money in there. But those are things that you just don't see on the surface as much, right?
Yeah.
You don't see that like you see signing a free agent or something of that, or putting an extension together. So I don't know how that all meshes out. It was interesting. You're right. The DeWitts are still there, and I don't know. Seeing them at the press conference was a little bit. I don't know if it was jarring or not. But the elder is obviously aging. I mean, I still, he's been in the public eye for 25 years now, more than that. Owning the Cardinals, really 30 years. And so obviously, some of those memories are different, and so you can tell he's getting older, and that's understandable. Junior looked like he had huge bags under his eyes. I don't know if he's stressing out on some with the fact that that there's nobody coming in or what, or the third. I mean, but yeah, I don't. You need the ownership up there. You need them to be in front of the media, and you need them to make a public appearance because, I mean, some owners don't, but they need. I mean, I think it's a credit to them that they do, but they're not always the most fluid, I guess, especially when you've got him up there against Chaim Bloom, who was very composed and did a very good job even when he was off remarks, and is just bringing a new energy. Yeah, Bill DeWitt the third says message received on on payroll and things of that nature. But I think it's going to be very interesting to see how that pans out, right? I mean, it was interesting to hear him say that some seats were the same price or less, but we also know that season tickets went up. So and maybe that's overall, I don't know, but how those things work together, they can, but seems, I don't know. So yeah, I think the DeWitts still have a little bit of a, it's Missouri. They have a little bit of show me, right? Let's see that you're willing to make some changes as well, along with, and how you support Chaim in a different way than maybe you supported Mo, especially over the last few years. I think, we'll have to wait and see, because eventually, especially when it comes to financial issues, that's where the money stops. I mean, that's where the blame has to eventually wind up. Trades and things like that can maybe be assigned to Bloom and his staff, but when it gets to, we couldn't buy this guy because payroll wouldn't let us, or we couldn't do this because payroll wouldn't let us, then that goes to the DeWitts. But I think on the flip side of that, when Chaim Bloom can go and add staff, when Chaim Bloom can go get TrackMan for the minors or whatever he needs. I'm sure that's a dated reference.
Sure.
Then, I think the DeWitts should get the credit for that because they were able to put out the money for it.
Yeah, that's. I feel like there has to be some investment on their side to show that, hey, this is new, and don't lose faith in us, because I feel like people have, and that's that. Where we began the show by Mo knowing when his time was up. I mean, is there some concern from you knowing that he knows that things aren't going to change? I mean, they did bring up, payroll will have to, catch up to 2025, 2026. They made those comments, but back to the same thing. Actions speak louder than words. I feel like there's a lot of skepticism that that's going to work out, and it's not like they haven't spent money. They've spent stupid money a little bit, and our is our faith going to start with Bloom knowing what he can and can't spend and where he wants to do it?
I think there's some of that. I think there's some idea, and of course we haven't seen it, and I don't know that Chaim Bloom's track record in free agent signings is unblemished at all.
Yeah,
But there's some idea that he's more in tune with what players have value these days, right? I mean, he's not necessarily going to go spend a 4-year contract on Brett Cecil or anything of that nature. I think there's some trust there, but we'll have to wait and see how that plans out. But yeah, I think that Chaim Bloom doesn't take that job if he doesn't feel like he's going to get 85 to 90% of what he wants, right? I
yeah,
mean, he came into this position to audit the organization and say, this is what you need. I don't think, and that was 2 years ago. I don't think he would be in that chair right now if he didn't think he was going to get the support that he needed to do those
sure.
things.
Good. Yeah, that makes you feel better right around. Just the belief factor of someone that's been around is it'll be massive, and time will tell, but it kind of makes me think that, and I mean, this is the optimistic side of it too, that we do see something new this offseason as far as a win or that Weatherhill deal would be awesome, a win or Herrera or things like that to double down and show that, hey, these guys are here, this is what we're going to build around, and let us improve from the ground up and do this.
Yeah. And I think that, I mean, it's just been one press conference and some other things of that nature. But I have a feeling Chaim Bloom is going to have fewer rhetorical crutches than John Mozeliak
Yeah,
did.
sure.
I don't know that we did not hear a net out of Chaim Bloom like we did like quite a bit this year at the Blogger Day. There's probably not a lot of ultimately's or at the end of the days or anything of that nature. Chaim Bloom feels like he is very media savvy. Not that Mo wasn't. Mo did a fine job there, but I do think he tended to. And again, it's one press conference. After we've spent 10 years with Chaim Bloom, we may have some rhetorical issues that we may see some favorite phrases that he uses. Although hopefully low hanging fruit isn't one of them. And so we will see. But I think
I use that all the time.
but I feel like after a week it's nice. It's a refreshing change.
Sure.
Excuse me. And I'm, optimistic about what comes next.
Yeah, I mean that's the best way I could that's the best way I can describe what I feel right now. You know what I mean? And it's one of those to where it was just frustrating, the last 2 or 3 years, and not to heap it all on Mo, but he still towed that line a little bit and kind of dug his heels in and could foresee the problem, but there wasn't any change, and I just hope they aren't behind the 8 ball too far at this point to dig out quickly, because I mean I would like to see them knock it at a wild card door next year with the team that they have. I mean, look what essentially Cleveland sold this year and made a run.
Yeah,
it's one of those, and they were outmanned by a Detroit team, but still they were playing this week when most of the other teams weren't. And I know that's not the end goal, but I hope that's where they can start and then turn it into hey, we're going to be knocking at that door every year, and optimistically I think they're close.
well, I mean, granted, a lot of external circumstances, but beginning of September, the Cardinals and the Reds were basically tied,
Yeah,
right? Granted, it was the Mets basically giving that away,
sure,
but
sure.
still, I mean, you were right there in September with a team that you didn't expect to do anything. So yeah, I think there's, like Chaim Bloom said, they're going to compete every time out, and they're not planning on finishing last or anything like that. But we will see. While this is probably the best place to stop, I do think there's one thing I wanted to bring up that I forgot to earlier, so I'm going to go do it now. Chaim Bloom made some comments after, not in the press conference, more afterwards, because he did the whole gauntlet of press interviews with the writers and the cat and other people. But one thing that came out of one of those, I think it was with the writers, was this idea, he said something to the fact that they given Jordan Walker some things to change, but he knew that it would be difficult for him to change them during the season, that it was kind of an off-season type of thing. Those kind of comments make me think that Jordan Walker still is a part of this future. Now, granted, he's going to have to go home. He's going to have to make these changes, but it makes me feel like he's not really on the radar, at least for this offseason, to be moved.
No, agreed with that. I felt like there was a lot of doubling down with some of the new guys, and Walker being the number one on that list. And that's kind of why I brought it up with the Wynn Walker Weatherholt type situation of extensions. I don't think Walker's there because I think the belief is starting to wane a little bit, and I think that has more to do with what's happening behind the scenes. And that I go back to Mo on that one. That one where he was clearly uncomfortable answering that question a few years ago. Right. But I do feel like they're just like, hey, this kid's 23, 24. We can't give up on him yet because the skills are there. Because, improved defensively, great base runner. If he starts hitting, that's going to be, those things are hard to find. And there's been enough egg on the face of guys they've given up on. So hopefully they see something that we don't. It's one of those that they clearly sent him home with some directives. And hopefully this, with the new developmental style that they're investing in, let's hope that we can finally tap into that potential.
Yeah, because I think next year is the last year for Jordan.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I think that they, like you said, that's a new development team. They've sent him home with this, and if he doesn't make these changes, or if these changes don't work, then it feels like that's it, right? I mean, that they said we've done all we can do, and hopefully somebody else can click with you.
Sure, turns into the Alex Reyes effect.
Yeah, and I mean that's a lot of pressure on a guy that's 23 to know that next year's a make or break for him, but that's just the way it is. Unfortunately,
that's the business.
Yeah. And maybe he's been mishandled by the organization. I think there's some arguments to be made for that, but it is what it is. You can't go back and change that. So we'll see. Hopefully, like I said, this new staff and everything that way they've looked at it, maybe. I don't know. I don't remember if he's one of the ones that's, staying in St. Louis or he's in Jupiter or whatever. He's around the team this winter, but hopefully, we see some of the significant improvements next year and see the Jordan Walker that the Cardinals thought they were getting when they drafted him. And that will go a long way to making this team competitive.
Sure. Yeah. That's been a lot of the issue. I mean, I felt like they weren't necessarily giving up on Gorman either, which kind of surprised me. But I mean, they're going to have to trade a couple of those guys, I would assume. But I just don't think it's Walker, and growing less thinking that's Gorman.
Yeah, Katie Wu has said that she thinks two of Gorman, Burleson, Newt Barr, and Donovan get traded this winter. Whether that's because she's looking at the roster and says that's what needs to happen, or if she's got some inside information or something, I don't know. I mean, Bloom was pretty clear of, hey, we're not, except for like Nolan, but Arenado, we don't have a, hey, we have to trade this player. It's going to be, what's the market look like? What are people calling to offer us? I think in one way it was no player is guaranteed to move, but on the other side, I think it was no player, with maybe a couple of exceptions, is safe, right? I mean, that if somebody gives them a deal that they like for, Brendan Donovan, they'll ship him out.
Sure.
I think that they're not especially with a new regime coming in, they don't have the connections as much, and so I mean, granted, they won't like it, but I think they aren't like, hopefully, they're not overvaluing their players and are willing to get the value that they can. So I think that is why I think what we've said, we go into this offseason expecting movement, because we don't know who could go, but we feel like some people are.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed. And I don't know. I mean, there's guys that I wouldn't say giving up on, but one that may need a change of scenery that I see in my view, and that may just not fit the rest of them. So I don't know. That's going to change more to the more to the excitement of what's going to happen this offseason.
Yeah. Well, and especially in Gorman, we've talked about this too. Nobody's buying Gorman at what Gorman can be.
Sure.
They're buying
Yeah.
at what he is, and that's very, very low. So it may be with a situation where we think, okay, the Cardinals think that, hey, we can. There's some tinkering we could do here. We still have some possibilities, and if they're only going to offer us, a single A lottery ticket, then we'll just hold on to him and not worry about it. So, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they hold on to a Gorman and a Newt Bar and trade Burleson and Donovan just because that's where the value is.
Yeah, that's possibly. And I mean, there's names that I want to keep, but I understand. I mean, that's
Sure.
If you got to trust the end goal. I mean, it may have to hurt sometimes.
Yep. All right. Well, Alan and I'll probably come back next week and maybe talk about individual players and their seasons with less going on during the playoffs. We'll have to make a little bit of it gives us a chance to review a little bit of 2025. We've got Rich Bray after this talking about Rick Ankiel, so stick around for that. But until next time, for Alan, I'm Daniel. Good night.
Go Brewers. Good night.
Who are the Cardinals at our best? To me, it's simple. This organization, at its best, sets the standard for the rest of baseball. That's what set this organization apart for 100 years. Going back to when Branch Rickey literally invented the farm system a short walk from where we're sitting here today. To when George Kissel revolutionized how the game was taught. To when Whitey Herzog went all in on a style of play that set the tone for the sport for a decade. And to when, under the DeWitt family's leadership, this organization, including many people who are here, changed the way the industry thought about the amateur draft and about how to use information to make baseball decisions.
Hi, everyone. Rich Bray here with a look back at how Game 1 of the 2000 NLDS changed Rick Ankiel's career forever. Heading into the game that came to define his career, 21-year-old rookie left-hander Rick Ankiel wasn't nervous. Quote, "I was not hurt, I was not afraid, I was not particularly sick or distracted or particularly anxious," he wrote 17 years later. In Game 1 of the National League Division Series, on a warm and sunny afternoon with a slight cross breeze, in front of exactly 52,378 people, including my mom, I stood on the mound at Busch Stadium, convinced I would be great, that it was my destiny. Although Ankiel was preparing to face an Atlanta Braves lineup that won 95 games during the regular season and had future Hall of Famer Greg Maddux taking the mound opposite him, it was no surprise that Ankiel was confident. After all, the native of Port St. Lucie, Florida, had known nothing but success in his young career. Just 3 years earlier, USA Today had named him its High School Player of the Year after he struck out 162 batters in 74 innings his senior season. He followed that success with Minor League Player of the Year awards from USA Today and Baseball America in 1999. Ankiel entered the 2000 season as Baseball America's #1 rated prospect and had lived up to expectations, going 11-7 with a 3.50 ERA as a rookie. In 175 innings, he had struck out 194 batters. Now he was headed to the postseason. During the final weeks of the regular season, the Cardinals pitching staff was wearing thin. Garrett Stevenson was battling soreness in his arm. Andy Bennis battled the same in his knee. Pat Henkin was tiring. That left Ankiel and staff ace Darryl Kyle to carry the bulk of the postseason pitching load. As Cardinals manager Tony La Russa and pitching coach Dave Duncan examined the postseason schedule, they came to a decision that haunted La Russa more than any other in his managerial career. By starting Ankiel in Game 1, the Cardinals could pitch the rookie again in Game 4 on 4 days rest. Kyle could then pitch Game 2 and, if necessary, Game 5 on just 3 days rest. The Braves were using a similar strategy, lining up Maddux to pitch Games 1 and 4 opposite Ankiel, and Tom Glavine to pitch Games 2 and 5 against Kyle. The downside of the plan was that Ankiel, who at age 21 was the second youngest pitcher in MLB history to start Game 1 of a playoff series, would face the added pressure of pitching against Maddux, a future Hall of Famer. Making Ankiel's task even harder was the absence of veteran catcher Mike Matheny, who 11 days earlier cut his hand on a Bowie knife his brother sent him as a birthday gift. Instead, Carlos Hernandez, who was battling back tightness that led to surgery after the season, was behind the plate. Ankiel appeared to have routine playoff debut jitters in the first inning, Braves shortstop Rafael Furcal led off the game with a single that just eluded a diving Jim Edmonds in the right field gap. Ankiel struck out Andrew Jones on 3 pitches, and Furcal was caught stealing for the second out. But Ankiel walked Chipper Jones and Andre Galarraga before finally getting Brian Jordan to hit a pop fly to first baseman Will Clark in foul territory. The Cardinals lineup tried to provide Ankiel comfort in the bottom half of the inning, scoring 6 runs in the bottom of the first before the rookie returned to the mound for the second inning. Ankiel benefited from a line drive double play in the second inning, but received no such luck in the third. He walked Maddox to lead off the inning and jammed Rafael Furcal on an inside fastball to produce an infield pop fly. On his 44th pitch of the afternoon, Ankiel threw a curveball that dove into the dirt, skipping past Hernandez and back to the screen. I held onto the ball too long, tried not to hang the curveball. Didn't exactly trust it, rushed it, Ankiel wrote in his 2017 autobiography. Instead of flicking the outer inches of the strike zone, I launched the pitch too far right. It came out of my hand, off my fingers, all wrong. Hernandez lunged to his left. The ball bounced near Jones's feet and past Hernandez's shoulder, and Maddox loped to second base. The ball hit the backstop. Hernandez chased it, and I stood near the front of the mound and watched all of it happen, sort of curious. On the next pitch, Ankiel and Hernandez got crossed up, forcing Hernandez to awkwardly catch a curveball. The pitch after that hit the backstop on the fly. Boy, all of a sudden things have come unraveled here for Rick Ankiel, ESPN broadcaster Buck Martinez said. Andrew Jones walked 1 pitch later. He advanced to second when Ankiel's 5th pitch to Chipper Jones sailed over Hernandez, who had leaped into the air in a desperate attempt to corral it. Ankiel struck Chipper Jones out on a nasty inside curveball, but 1 pitch later, Hernandez needed to leap out of his crouch to prevent another fastball from reaching the backstop. With Andre Galarraga at the plate, Ankiel uncorked another heater well over Hernandez's head, plating Maddox with his 4th wild pitch of the day. After Galarraga walked, Brian Jordan singled to left field on the first pitch he saw. 16 years later, at a Cardinals fantasy camp, Ankiel embraced Jordan and told him that the hug was his way of thanking him for swinging at that initial offering. During the game, however, the rookie found no such humor. Ankiel threw his 5th wild pitch of the inning before walking Jordan to load the bases. After Walt Weiss singled to score Galarraga and Jones, making the score 6-4, La Russa mercifully emerged from the dugout to rescue him. Within the span of 20 pitches, 5 had reached the backstop, making Ankiel the first pitcher to throw 5 wild pitches in an inning since Burt Cunningham for the Buffalo Bisons of the Players League on September 15th, 1890. I guess at least I set a record, Ankiel said after the game. Reliever Mike James retired Lopez for the final out of the inning, then threw 2 more scoreless innings to earn the win. Edmonds led off the Cardinals half of the 4th inning with a home run over the right field wall, and from there the game was placed in the hands of the Cardinals bullpen. Mike Timlin threw 1 scoreless inning, Britt Reams threw 2, and Dave Veras walked around an unearned run to earn the save. The Cardinals went on to sweep the best-of-5 series, scoring 24 runs across 3 games, but their prized left-hander was never the same. In Game 2 of the NLCS against the New York Mets, Ankiel threw just 2/3 of an inning, walking 3 and throwing 2 wild pitches. In Game 5, with the Cardinals already trailing 6-0, La Russa tried Ankiel again. He again recorded just 2 outs, walking 2 batters and throwing 2 more wild pitches. In the years to come, the Cardinals attempted a variety of solutions to get Ankiel back on track, even sending him down to rookie ball. None of it worked. Finally, in 2004, Ankiel told the Cardinals he was retiring. A few hours later, after a conversation between general manager Walt Jocketty and Ankiel's agent, Scott Boras, the Cardinals assigned Ankiel to the minors, not as a pitcher, but as an outfielder. Incredibly, Ankiel returned to St. Louis as a position player in 2007. In 190 plate appearances, he hit 11 home runs, then added 25 more in 2008. He played 7 major league seasons as an outfielder, where he played 536 of his 587 career games. So that's the story of how Rick Ankiel developed the yips. For more Cardinals history, visit stlredbirds.com or follow me on Twitter at Remembirds, REMEMBIRDS.
So he's really like he's on ice skates back there right now.
Assessment from a long-time Major League catcher, Buck Martinez. So there is the 5th wild pitch of the inning. Over to third, Galarraga. Over to second, Jordan. And now a base hit. could make this a 4-run inning.